It all started with a single crack in the pavement, a tiny, insignificant detail that I barely noticed. That is, until it wasn't just a crack anymore. Until my entire front yard had been replaced with a massive slab of cold, gray concrete. I had no idea who had done it. No idea why. But then I saw her, standing at the edge of my ruined lawn, clipboard in hand, with that smug, self-satisfied grin. Laura Kensington, the nightmare of Kensington Heights Estates. And in that moment, I knew one thing. She had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because this time, she wasn't just messing with any homeowner. She was messing with me, Ethan Blackwood, and she was about to regret it. If you've ever had to deal with an HOA nightmare or a power-tripping Laura, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. It helps our channel reach more people fighting back against HOA abuse. Now let's get into it. The day everything changed. The day had started off perfectly normal, the kind of normal that makes you think nothing could possibly go wrong. I had just pulled into my driveway, coffee in hand, ready for a quiet evening at home. My mind was already drifting toward the plans I had for the weekend, some much-needed relaxation, maybe a barbecue in my backyard. But fate had other ideas. And then I saw it. I slammed on the brakes so hard my tires screeched, sending an echo through the neighborhood. My heart pounded violently, a sinking sensation gripping my chest as I stared in disbelief. My hands went slack, my coffee cup tumbling onto the car's floor. My breathing quickened, a deep, gut-wrenching sense of loss hitting me like a freight train. My lawn was gone. Not just my lawn, my entire yard. The soft, lush grass I had spent years nurturing. The flower beds my mother had helped me plant, now reduced to a memory. The delicate arrangement of solar-powered lights, gone without a trace. Instead, a cold, heartless slab of gray concrete stretched from one end of my property to the other. My jaw clenched. My fists curled so tightly my nails dug into my palms. A storm of rage boiled inside me, an uncontrollable fire that spread with each passing second. And then she appeared. Laura Kensington, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. The woman whose very name sent shivers down the spines of every homeowner in Kensington Heights Estates. And there she was, strutting toward me with the kind of smug confidence only someone truly drunk on power could possess. "Oh, Ethan," she trilled, as if she had just delivered a thoughtful gift instead of desecrating my property. Her lips curled into that insufferable smirk, her clipboard clutched in her manicured claws. I turned to her, my voice razor-sharp. "Laura, what did you do?" She let out an exaggerated sigh, rolling her eyes like a frustrated schoolteacher dealing with a slow student. "Your yard was an eyesore, Ethan." The grass was uneven, the colors clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic, and frankly, it just didn't fit in. So, I made an executive decision. My hands shook as I took a step forward, my entire body trembling with barely restrained fury. "You made an executive decision? This is my property. You had no right." Laura scoffed, waving a dismissive hand as if I were throwing a childish tantrum. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's just landscaping. And now you won't have to mow anymore. I did you a favor." "A favor?" My voice cracked under the sheer weight of my anger. "You ruined my home. My mother's garden. Do you even understand what you've done?" She rolled her eyes again, her expression darkening. "Oh, spare me the sob story, Ethan." That patchy excuse for a yard was bringing down property values. The HOA board had a vote, and I decided to take care of it. "You decided?" I hissed, stepping closer. "You mean you bullied the board into submission? I know how you operate, Laura. And I swear to you, this is the last time you'll ever get away with something like this." Laura's smirk widened into something more sinister. "Oh, please. What are you going to do, Ethan? Sue the HOA? Good luck with that. The board backs me. The homeowners here are too scared to fight back. You think you're the first to complain? They all fall in line eventually. And so will you." A cold shiver ran down my spine, but it wasn't fear. It was clarity. The realization that this woman had been getting away with her reign of terror for far too long. My rage deepened into something more dangerous, resolve. "You think you're untouchable," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You think you can bulldoze over people's lives, and no one will ever stop you." Laura crossed her arms, arching a perfectly sculpted brow. "That's exactly what I think, Ethan. You don't have the power to stop me. None of you do. Now, unless you want to start racking up fines, I suggest you get used to your new yard. A slow, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Laura, you just made the worst mistake of your life. For the first time, something flickered in her expression, uncertainty. She tried to mask it, letting out a short, condescending laugh. Oh, please. You're all bark and no bite, Ethan. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. She turned on her heel, but I wasn't done. Enjoy your power trip while it lasts, Laura, I called after her. Because when I'm done with you, you'll be the one wishing you had mowed your own damn lawn. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, her step faltered. And that was all I needed. Laura Kensington had no idea what she had just started, but she was about to find out. The war begins. I stormed inside, my blood boiling, and yanked open my laptop. If Laura thought she could get away with this, she had another thing coming. My hands trembled with rage as I typed furiously, my breath short and ragged. My heartbeat pounded so loudly in my ears I could barely think. This wasn't just a minor dispute. This was war. My fingers flew across the keyboard, searching every possible legal precedent that could prove what she had done was more than just overreach. I wasn't just looking for a loophole. I wanted something airtight, something so damning that there would be no way out for her. My eyes scanned article after article, my vision blurring as I read about property rights, HOA abuse, and state laws that protected homeowners from power-hungry tyrants like Laura. Then, there it was, a golden ticket. A state law buried under pages of legal jargon that made it explicitly clear. Altering another person's property without consent wasn't just unethical. It wasn't just a finable offense. It was criminal. A felony. The kind of charge that could land someone in jail, ruin their career, and make them a social pariah overnight. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling shakily. I had her. I finally had her. But my moment of satisfaction was short-lived, replaced almost immediately by something else, something deeper, something worse. Rage. Not just at her, but at myself. How had I let this happen? How had I stood by, playing by the rules, while she bulldozed over every single one of them? How many others had she done this to? My stomach twisted as I thought of my neighbors, people who had lived here for years, people who might not have had the time, the resources, or the sheer fury to fight back like I did. I needed to know. I needed to find out just how deep her corruption ran. Then, as if the universe had read my mind, my phone buzzed violently against the table. I snatched it up, barely glancing at the caller ID before answering. She did it to you too. The voice on the other end was raw, filled with barely restrained anger. It was my neighbor, Mr. Thompson. What are you talking about? I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. Come outside. Something about his tone sent an icy chill down my spine. I moved to the window, hard hammering as I yanked back the curtain. My breath caught in my throat. His yard, paved over with concrete. Mrs. Alvarez's flower beds, gone. Greg's sprinkler system, buried under solid cement. I stepped outside in a daze, my feet feeling like lead as I walked toward Thompson, who stood stiffly on the sidewalk, his phone still clutched in his hand. I got home late last night, he said, his voice hoarse. Didn't even notice until this morning. He gestured helplessly at his ruined yard. She did this. Laura did this. Without your permission? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He laughed bitterly. You think I would have let this happen? Behind us, more doors creaked open. More footsteps on pavement. The neighborhood was waking up to a collective nightmare. I didn't sign anything, Mrs. Alvarez murmured, her face pale. She ripped out my mother's garden. My sprinkler system's under there, Greg muttered. Do you have any idea how much that's going to cost to fix? I swallowed hard, something hot and ugly burning in my chest. Laura hadn't just targeted me. She had gone on a full-blown power trip, redesigning half the neighborhood using HOA funds, without homeowner consent. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. That was when I knew we weren't just dealing with a controlling HOA president. We were dealing with a full-blown tyrant. And she was about to learn what happens when you push people too far. The neighborhood rises. That night, a group of us gathered in Mr. Thompson's backyard. The air was thick with tension, the kind that crackles like a storm on the horizon. Faces were tight with anger, eyes glistening with frustration. Some of us clutched printouts. Others held phones with photos ready. Laura thought she was untouchable. She thought she could bulldoze over our rights like we were nothing. But she had just declared war on the wrong homeowners. And tonight, we weren't just neighbors. We were a battalion, ready to fight. The first thing we did was lay out every shred of evidence. We documented everything: photos, receipts, testimonies, video after video of the destruction. Emails from Laura, each one dripping with condescension, telling us we should be grateful for the improvements. Then came the financials. Mr. Rodriguez, a retired accountant, had taken a deep dive into the HOA spending records. What he found sent a ripple of shock through the group. "She's been siphoning HOA funds for years," he said, his voice dark with barely restrained fury. "Lavish dinners, personal shopping trips. And this," he jabbed at a printed receipt. "A first-class vacation to Hawaii, paid for with our money." A gasp rippled through the group. My hands clenched into fists. So, not only did she destroy our homes, she stole from us too. The weight of it all hit us like a tidal wave. This wasn't just Laura being a power-hungry HOA tyrant. This was fraud. This was theft. This was destruction of property. Tears welled in Mrs. Alvarez's eyes. "She thought we wouldn't fight back," she whispered. "She thought we'd just take it." I felt something shift inside me, a fire igniting deep in my gut. Laura had underestimated us. She thought we were weak. She thought we'd roll over and accept her tyranny. She was wrong. I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer. He picked up on the second ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "Ethan," I didn't even hesitate. "I need you to hear this." One by one, we relayed every detail: the destruction, the stolen funds, the emails, the harassment. My lawyer was silent as we spoke, but I could hear his breathing getting heavier. And then, "Ethan, this is a massive lawsuit waiting to happen." The words sent a jolt of electricity through me. For the first time that night, we felt hope. Hope that Laura was finally going to pay for what she had done. Hope that justice wasn't just a concept, but something we were about to make real. Hope that soon, she wouldn't be the one standing over us, dictating our lives. We would be the ones standing over her, watching as her empire crumbled. And we weren't going to stop until every single piece of our community was restored. The fall of Laura Kensington. The next morning, we sent Laura a cease and desist letter. It was neatly typed, legally airtight, and delivered directly to her doorstep. I imagined her reaction the moment she opened it, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. She didn't take it well. I heard the shriek before I even saw her, a high-pitched, nails-on-a-chalkboard kind of screech that sent birds scattering from the trees. I stepped outside just in time to see her storming down the sidewalk toward me, letter in hand, her face twisted in pure outrage. "This is ridiculous," she spat, shaking the paper so violently I thought it might rip. I was doing what's best for the community. I folded my arms, standing firm. "Laura, you poured concrete over our properties without permission. That's not just an overstep. That's destruction of property. That's fraud." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, as if she couldn't decide whether to scream or argue. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she finally snapped. "It's a minor aesthetic improvement. If anything, you should be thanking me." My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Minor aesthetic improvement? Laura, my lawn is gone. My flower beds are gone. My mailbox was ripped out and replaced without my consent. You didn't just improve anything. You vandalized private property." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please. The HOA has full authority to enforce community standards. You agreed to that when you moved in." I took a step closer, my voice lowering into something colder, more deliberate. "No, Laura. That's where you're wrong. The HOA can regulate exterior maintenance, sure. But they cannot, under any circumstances, alter private property without written consent from the owner. That's not just an HOA violation. That's a direct violation of state property laws." Her lips pressed into a thin line. I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with defiance. "I have the full backing of the board," she said, crossing her arms. I shook my head. "You think that's going to save you? You misused HOA funds for personal projects, Laura. That's embezzlement. You approved modifications without majority consent. That's a violation of HOA bylaws. And the kicker, you destroyed property that didn't belong to you. That's criminal damage." Her face paled, but still, she clung to her arrogance like a lifeline. "Oh, come on. You're really going to drag the law into this?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Laura, The law is already involved. As if on cue, the sound of car doors slamming shut echoed down the street. I turned to see two county police officers walking up the sidewalk, their expressions unreadable. Behind them, an official-looking man in a suit, most likely from the county auditor's office, held a thick file of documents. Laura's entire body went rigid. "What is this?" she stammered. One of the officers, a no-nonsense woman with a badge gleaming in the morning sun, pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Laura Kensington." Laura barely nodded, her face ghost white. The officer continued, "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, criminal property damage, and fraudulent use of HOA funds." Her breath hitched. This is a mistake," she sputtered. "I was just following HOA regulations." The officer didn't blink. "Ma'am, you misallocated thousands of dollars in community funds for unauthorized projects. That's a felony. You also tampered with private property without consent. That's criminal mischief and vandalism. I'd suggest you remain silent from here on out." Laura whirled toward me, her eyes wild, pleading. "You did this," she hissed. "You're ruining my life over a few patches of grass." I tilted my head, feigning deep thought. "No, Laura, you did this. The moment you thought you could play God with people's homes." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. She had bullied, harassed, and manipulated homeowners for years. Now, the consequences had finally caught up to her. The officer moved to cuff her, and that's when the screaming started. "This is harassment. This is illegal. You can't do this to me," she shrieked, thrashing like a child throwing a tantrum. But it was over. The law had spoken. Justice served. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Laura Kensington was found guilty on all counts: embezzlement, criminal property damage, and fraudulent use of HOA funds. The judge sentenced her to 5 years behind bars, a $250,000 restitution order, and a permanent ban from ever holding a position of authority within any HOA again. When they led Laura away in handcuffs, she shot me a look, not one of anger, not even one of defiance, but of pure, unfiltered regret. She had thought she was untouchable. She had thought she could do whatever she wanted without consequence. She had thought wrong. As I stepped out of the courtroom, I was met with applause. My neighbors, my friends, they clapped me on the back, thanked me for standing up, for fighting when no one else dared to. I walked home that evening, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Justice had been served. Laura Kensington had learned the hard way: you don't mess with people's homes. And you sure as hell don't mess with a man like me. And as for Kensington Heights Estates, we were finally free. If you love seeing justice served, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to deal with an HOA nightmare? I want to hear your story.